Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Connection Week 182. We are in a very busy time. I acknowledge all of you who are here, whether you came live, whether you're listening to the recording, uh, gearing up for Purim, and all of that. So much that is, I know, needs to be done. My husband is now in the supermarket as we speak, and I was on the phone with him trying to figure out what to get for shalach manis for the kids or whatever, and I was like, I'm passing off the phone. I got coffee and connection. Time to go. We here it is actually an hour earlier for me because we have not changed our clocks yet, but I always have promoted this as 2 o'clock Eastern, and so that's on me to switch the time. So thank God it worked out. My son's actually with my husband, so no bedtime going on right now. And so I am excited to jump into our topic today. It's very timely. It's something that I've been hearing a lot about, and it's coming up in different contexts. And it really is so much connected to Adar, and as we're going to see, even connected to the Purim story, which is the question. All right, I have like a popcorn kernel in my teeth. Mhm. Now it's, like, worse. Okay. My daughter was studying today, and she's like, "Oh, I'm snacky," so she made some popcorn. Okay, so here we go. The whole question of simcha, right? We know this idea of Mishanechnes Adar Marbim Besimcha. As Adar comes in, we're supposed to be happy, and Purim is supposed to be this happy time, and yet we know that we're not always happy, right? Like, are we supposed to? Is there even an idea like to always be besimcha? We know there's this idea of ivdu et Hashem besimcha, serve Hashem with joy and happiness, and what does that actually mean in the reality of the fact that we have sometimes difficult things that are happening, sad things that are happening, stressful things that are happening? We have all different feelings and moods and emotions going on. Are we supposed to, let's first and foremost ask the question, are we supposed to just ignore them? Are we supposed to push them under the rug? Are we supposed to pretend that they're not happening? And the very first thing that is so important to say very adamantly and clearly is no, right? Like that, and I think, the answer to that is so clear because we know that just trying to push our way our negative feelings actually doesn't work. Pretending that they're not there and just pretending everything's okay doesn't actually work. It actually can make your difficult feelings. I'm not even going to say it's not when I say negative feelings, I don't mean negative like there's something bad or wrong with them. They're not bad or wrong. They just are. Like all feelings are healthy. All feelings were given to us by Hashem to help us in different aspects of our life. And just see inside out for anyone who wants a nice, clean, amazing thing to entertain yourself and learn something from. I'm such a fan. I'm such a fan of that movie. I'm so happy that I watched it after so many people told me to. And it's like very powerfully shows something I've always tried to explain, the fact that all of our emotions are good. They're all there to help us in some way. And and as long as we are aware of them, as long as we are honoring them, which means that we give ourselves permission to feel them and we don't try to push them away, then they only help us. The times that they're not helping us, the times that they're going to start to control us, that they are in charge. And yes, I'm going to talk about them like, kids and living inside of us or people inside of us, which interestingly is how the movie portrays it. The only time that it's going to be negative, that they are going to drive the car and get us to kind of get stuck, is if we don't acknowledge them, if we don't recognize them, because it's by recognize them. Sorry, the movie's called Inside Out. There's actually two of them now. There's Inside Out 2, which is also amazing. So it's a cartoon movie. It's not cartoon. It's animated, whatever. uh Brilliant, really brilliant. And so the way that they it becomes negative is that if we don't, here's the thing about our emotions help us understand what's going on. Our emotions help us understand our feelings. They help us understand what's bothering us. They help us understand our thoughts, right? They help us understand what we're believing about the world, what fears are holding us back, what expectations we have, what beliefs we have, what we're making things mean, where we're getting stuck. Our emotions can give us so much information if we pay attention to them, if we acknowledge them for what they are, which is our feelings, right? Now, our feelings don't mean that that's the way something is. It means that that is the way we are interpreting it. It's the way that it's what we're experiencing based on our past, based on our thoughts, based on what is going on for us. There's so much here. I go way in depth on this in the Absolutely Feminine program. I have a whole module on it. We talk about it in almost every coaching call. I won't be able to do it justice here, but it's so powerful to understand that how our feelings are actually can be our greatest allies, one of our greatest allies in living a conscious life that is focused on, being the best woman we want to be, right? And when we're aware of our feelings, then we can control them. We can use them as the information that they're meant to be to then be able to consciously, right? Choose how we're showing up, choose what we're believing, choose what is going to hold us back, right? We become in control. We get to choose what we're going to go after, right? Rather than our emotions being the things that determine what we're looking at, what we're focused on, right? So that's number one. Okay. Also, if we don't acknowledge them, if we don't really look and listen and appreciate our feelings, they can start to like pull us and consume us rather than saying, okay, I'm feeling sad right now. Let me figure out what's making me feel sad. If we're trying to ignore the sadness, that can actually cause us to get more stuck in it. So, our emotions are important. If we're feeling sad, then we need to acknowledge that. If we're feeling angry, we need to acknowledge it. And I don't mean that, oh, then we have to sit in our bed all day, or oh, then we have to go yell at everyone, or if we're feeling afraid, then we have to like hovel under the covers. It's once we acknowledge I'm feeling sad or angry or afraid that I can get curious, like what is going on for me, and I can deal with it. I can deal with it and not have it control, right? I get to be in control and I get to use it as information. So when we talk about being besimcha and a mitzvah of being besimcha, we know that it can't be about pretending that you don't have emotions and pretending that everything's okay if it's not. That can't be what it is because, like I said, that would just end up hurting us, right? And Hashem knows all this. Like He's not giving us mitzvahs to hurt us, God forbid. Like b'chai b'hem, we're meant to live by them. So what does it mean? How can we choose to be happy if we there is a reality of things that are making us sad or angry or frustrated or resentful or scared or nervous or all of the other possible emotions that could be coming up. And what's very fascinating to notice is how we actually see the answer to this in the Megillah itself, right? Towards the end of the Megillah, so I'm going to get a little bit more like teachy and whatever today, but in the Megillah itself, towards the end, we have, the end of the story. The Jews are saved, everything's great. And then Mordechai and Esther make rules, they make laws that become actually halacha of how we're going to commemorate what happened and celebrate what happened year after year. Now, can we take a step back for a moment? When Esther is doing this together with Mordecai, where is she? We have to remember for a moment. The story ends like on this, it seems to end on a high note. The truth is, the last parak, which is like extremely short and ends with the concept of taxes, is meant to come and be like, life went on and all the challenges that life goes on in. And then the question is going to be, what difference is this story going to make a difference to us? Is this history going to have an effect on us? That's a whole different topic in and of itself, which once I get started on that topic, I just keep going. So I'm going to hold off on that for now. But what we notice when we look at it is that as much as the Jewish people were saved and Mordecai was elevated to this elevated status and he, is like the top advisor and he has this great house and he's, like he's up there, Esther is still in the palace. Esther doesn't get to leave the palace. She continues to be the queen. Once somebody is a queen, she is not allowed to leave the palace. I'm not saying she can't go for a walk, but she will always be the we know this. Like once somebody has been with the king, she is married to the king, whether she's a wife or a concubine, she is there for life. And so while this was like a happy story for the most part for Am Yisrael, right? We were all saved. For Esther, there's still it's still tragedy, right? And maybe that's why there's one midrash that says it was her son that she raised to like go on and finish the building of the second temple because, and that is meant to give like some nechama, some comfort. Like she did good with that. And we know she did good with that. The whole story is about her doing good with the terrible situation that she found herself in, right? We talked about that a little bit last week. We have to remember that the story for her was still one of sadness, right? She is stuck married to this guy, this king, this, like he's often portrayed as silly or a little bit scary, right? He on a whim, he can change his mood very easily. Um, she's stuck there with this non-Jewish king in the palace, away from her community, away from her family, and it's sad. It's sad. And yet she's telling us how to be besimcha, how to have a joyful experience on the holiday. What does she tell us to do? What does the holiday become all about? Right? And we can actually see a few things in it. Um, she tells us that we have to really, there is the concept of community, try to connect ourselves to the community. That's what Mishloach Manot is about, and Matanot Levionim, right? Some of the different mitzvahs is about a community. It's interesting that I always feel around this time of year, right, between Shabbos Zachor and Purim, like it's like some like in it's all there are many years of my life that it was like the only time that I like went to shul, right? And it's like 3 times in 1 week. And I was just hearing a shir on the whole concept, here in Jerusalem, we're gonna have like a 3-day Purim. And one of the things the rabbi said is that Megillah was the only time women went to shul, like a few hundred, I don't know if it was 100 years ago or a few hundred years ago. It was the only time they went to shul. And it's this fascinating concept of like there's a communal aspect to it, right? You see all your neighbors, you see all the people around you. You have to make yourself part of a kahila, part of a community. So there definitely is, and the concept of mishloach manot, as much as we often give it to family and friends, it actually says specifically that it's meant to unite us because here Haman said we're this like, scattered nation that doesn't care about each other. And they gave that mitzvah to connect us, right? So actually I remember in high school, one of my youth group advisors saying, let's just go out and ring, where I lived, there were a lot of like just tons, almost every house was like a Jewish family. Not all of them were observant, but there were many, many. The the prevalent population still is a Jewish population. And so he's like, we're just gonna go ring doorbells and give out Mishloach Mano. Who wants to come? And then I did it with them. It was so fun. It was so nice to just like, connect to people in that way, not just give our family and friends, which was usually, which also is a positive experience. And then the other aspect that we see, the other mitzvah, right? The party and the reading of the Megillah, that is all about thanks. It's all about acknowledging what Hashem has done for us. It's all about gratitude. And very powerfully, these two things are the two ways that we can shift from whatever mindset we might be feeling that's not one of happiness to into being more happy. Now, again, I'm not saying that we have to always be happy and we can never feel sad, right? That was the whole first half, right? That this is not about pretending we don't have negative feelings, but we can have a feeling. We can be sad about something and it not envelop us, right? We could be disappointed or upset about something, maybe even angry or afraid or sad about something, and it doesn't have to envelop us. It doesn't have to take over our whole feeling, like our whole experience, that day, that week, that month, the way that it's going to take over is if we just sit in it and we don't work through it. So we see number one is working through our feelings is so powerful. And then the ways that we can also, once we've worked through it, shift out of it is by number one, connecting with others, right? Opening ourselves up for connection, whether, sharing, communicating in a loving, respectful way what we're feeling or looking to connect, totally separate, right? Looking to create connection in a different way. And sometimes that the way that we can do that is through the second piece, which is gratitude, right? And that's a really powerful way to shift our mindset from a more down place to a more happy place is by shifting to gratitude. And that's what Purim tells us, right? Is Purim always a happy day for everyone? Do we never get upset about anything? Do we never feel stressed or nervous or, like have a lot of stuff on our plate or we know other things that are going on. We also know that Purim is a big day for prayer. So obviously, if we're like engrossing ourselves in prayer, we're like specifically taking the opportunity to pray, then we're thinking about all the difficult things that we want to be praying about, right? So it's not that we're not meant to acknowledge that there's difficult realities in life, but when we can shift into a place of gratitude, it actually allows, it actually physically shifts our brain into a happier space, and it can allow us to exude more of happiness. It can allow us to be in a happier state, which is going to shift the way that we think about things, the way that we filter things, the way that we um, observe what's going on, right? And there's so many things that can also frustrate us on Purim that is very much going to be about a question of how we're looking at it, right? We see, the kids eating so much candy. Are we going to get frustrated or are we going to be happy for them and know that it's like a one day a year thing? We see our husband, getting into the Purim festivities. Are we going to be upset or are we going to be in a place of like, okay, this is the mitzvah, let me be supportive of it. Of course, if there's challenges that come up with any of those things, then, and I've done Coffee and Connections on this in the past, you can look all the way back to the first season of Coffee and Connection. I think it was the first season that I did a whole thing on how to enjoy Purim. And I talked a lot about these things, but I know we've talked about this over the years, also many of my programs, the idea of like, if there's a challenge that you know is going to happen over Purim, then plan for it, right? And see how can we make it all work? Because it can be challenging if like your husband's trying to like celebrate Purim and you're dealing with like a lot of kids or you have a hard time with where you're going to be, you're not so comfortable, or like you may have to work through some of your beliefs about celebrating Purim, or you may have different views, you may have learned different things about how to actually take Purim, like really fully celebrate Purim. And so it's important to deal with those even up front, like acknowledge the challenges that are going to come up so that they don't get in the way. And then once you have done that, excuse me, itchy, then a lot of it's going to be the way that we choose to look at it. And the more we're in a state of gratitude, the more that we're in a feeling of connection and community, that's going to make a difference in how we then experience it, right? And how easy it is to feel happy, even if there's a lot of different things going on around us. Is this resonating with all of you? I'd love to hear, like, any thoughts, any feelings, any, even just like practically, like where you see that this could be challenging. Yes. Okay. I guess that's great. I'm glad to hear that that's helpful. Um, and it is one of those like really busy days. There's a lot going on, a lot of different people with their different ways that they want to celebrate, right? Between our husbands and our kids and ourselves and grandkids and family and friends, there's a lot, and maybe even a lot of expectations. And so it's very powerful to choose, like I always recommend when we're going into one of these like high, possibly stressful times, to start out by asking, who do I want to be? What energy do I want to be in throughout this day? And if the answer that you come up with is, I want to be happy. It is a day of simcha. I do want to be in a state of happiness. And yet I see all of this stress or sadness or challenging issues around me. How can I shift into happiness? By the way, already by asking that question, you're already shifting your mindset, right? Because you're looking for solutions instead of staying stuck in the problem. That's amazing. So then you can look to see, okay, who can I connect with, right? How can I get support, or who can I talk to about this in a positive way, right? How can I communicate with my husband in advance? And number two, and especially important, how can I shift into a state of gratitude rather than staying in a negative problem type state, right? Where we're looking at the problems, we can shift into a state of gratitude where we're looking at the positives, right? Not only are we grateful for what we get to celebrate on that day, but grateful for what we have, the opportunities we have, the relationships that we have. Look, and let's just extending it out of Purim for a moment, even. There's always going to be challenging things that are true, in our lives, even if just the fact that, like, we don't get everything we want and all our expectations aren't always met. And, we don't have there's always going to be negative things that we can see in the people around us. And there's always going to be ways that people aren't being the way we want them to be. There's always going to be the challenging realities of the world, right? And the question is going to be, okay, what are we going to choose to focus on? And I don't just mean we're going to ignore the negative stuff. Remember, we said we have to look at the difficult stuff to deal with it. And then what is it that we're going to focus on? Where are we going to put most of our attention? Yes, we have to acknowledge those emotions that are going on and the challenges that are going on, and then are we willing to shift into a more positive place? Right. So what was the first question to ask ourselves was, who can I connect with? Right. Where can I create some connection? Like we saw in half of the mitzvot of Purim, half of the mitzvot of creating joy in our lives are about connection, right? The mishloach manot, the matzanot levionim are about allowing ourselves to remember that we are part of a community. We are connected to others. We are never alone, right? No matter what part, how much we may feel that we are scattered, right, whether literally or figuratively, we're always part of, we always have, and we can look to see who can we connect with. So again, who can you talk to? Who can you ask for support from? Who can you communicate with? Something that might be bothering you. Maybe, you can figure out things in advance. Even there's a lot of practical stuff that we could do to allow Purim to be a more powerful, enjoyable experience for all of us. As I said, 4 years ago, and I'll say it again, like, Purim doesn't have to be a man's holiday. Purim doesn't have to be a holiday that we don't enjoy. We can very much enjoy it. It may take some extra planning. It may take some extra, you know, thinking in advance. What is it that often bothers me? And what can I do to shift that? Like, if there's something that doesn't work for me every year, is there something practically I can do differently? And number two, is there a mindset shift that I can have that would make a difference for me? Right. So just as one example, and I know there are those that will say that that's not what Purim is about, but the majority of opinions will tell you that men are meant to get drunk on Purim. Okay. Love it or hate it. It is a reality. I know there are other opinions, but it's still not the majority. Okay. The majority will tell you that yes, it is their mitzvah to get drunk on Purim. So when women are like, I hate it that my husband's getting drunk, number one, could you go home? Number two, could you shift the way that you think about your husband getting drunk? If your husband getting drunk, you're looking at saying that's wrong, that's bad, then yeah, that's gonna make it that's not gonna feel very good, right? But if you're looking at it knowing, okay, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, and this is the outlet for it, and this is when it's meant to happen, and look at him having so much fun and like enjoying it. Now if you're thinking, like I was saying before, but now I'm stuck with all of the kids, okay, is there a way that the kids could you take them home? Is there a way that you could do a Suda in a place where the kids will be more contained? Is there a way to handle it so there's a babysitter or just a lot of women and kids that can hang out together? Like, to practically figure out how to set it up knowing that this is going to happen. It happens every year. So this is for everything. If something's always happening, we get to look at it and say, well, how can I practically set myself up for success instead of setting myself up for fail, like to have the same struggles that I have every year, right? Just as another practical example that has made such a difference for my life and is coming up is like the week before Pesach, I used to feel like I was always so hungry and I didn't have what to eat, and I'd have to run out and try to get myself something, and then it would take time, and I'd be in a bad mood, and I couldn't work so fast, and it was like such a mess trying to figure out like what everyone was going to eat. And like with the last few years, I just beforehand planned a few things out, made sure I had certain protein bars, made sure even last year I had access to an extra freezer. So I made some stuff in advance and froze it. And I had a lot of my food for the week before Pesach to eat. And I had made sure I had extra cans of tuna and that I had a place to keep, to have some extra fruits and vegetables and like just practically set myself up for success. And it was so much easier. It was like I felt like I had more time, I had more energy, and I was just so much more calm and centered. Someone's asking, why do the men get drunk? It's actually halacha. It's actually a mitzvah, that the men are that they're. Some even will say women, if they're in the right context and if they don't have children to take care of or whatever it is. That's a whole separate conversation I'm not going to get into because again, like everything, there's differences of opinions, but definitely with the men, the halacha is to get drunk ad lo yada until they can't determine between Haman and blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. Now there are those who will come and say that that's not meant. They're not actually supposed to get drunk, and there are some opinions that are coming now, and that I'm not saying coming now that people have learned, and yet the majority of the opinion through the generations has been that it is a mitzvah at the Suda, so not all of Purim, but at the Suda itself, at the meal that, we had the celebratory meal that we have on Purim for them to drink wine, to drink wine to the point of getting very drunk. So again, some will say, well, they could just go to sleep. But again, these are for people who maybe don't want to get drunk, or there's different opinions, or because people see that people, then it can become dangerous or it can become inappropriate. And so, yes, we want to be careful when and how. That's why it's important to make sure that we, are in the right context in doing it. But there really is a halacha that says that men are meant to get drunk. It's something about if you're asking why, it's something about the whole concept of the nahafochu, how everything like switched, how everything, and be'ezrat Hashem, please God, we should see the same, like just switch where like our enemies that seem to have some level of power are suddenly gone. They're destroyed and everything is switched, and that was really what happened in the Purim story, that like Haman and all the anti-Semites had the upper hand, and then all of a sudden we could go out and destroy them. Like it was just a switch, and it's connected to the concept of getting drunk. I'm sure there's a lot of deeper ideas there, but I have not researched it recently for sure, and so I'm not going to talk more about it. But it is important to know that if your husband is doing it, people that you know that are doing it, there is Jewish law that says that that's what they're supposed to be doing. So let's plan for it. Let's, set ourselves up to be okay with it, right? I know some people might find this controversial, but I'm just going to say it because it makes such a difference in our ability to actually enjoy ourselves on Purim. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. I hope that we can all really, may we all not only experience simcha, but be like able to really live in a happy, like in a joyful experience in our lives, and to be able to deal with our challenges and shift into joy easily, and as we're being real and authentic with ourselves, which is how we're going to get to a joyful place with the challenges that come up, and when we all have a really happy and joyful Purim, that we can take, experience the real joy of knowing that everything is in Hashem's control and He's really taking care of us every single moment. every single moment, and all the little details that we don't even know are going on are all coming together to fully save us. And may we experience a full redemption, a full salvation, the way they did then, Beyamim Hahem in those days, Bazman Hazeh in our time. Be'ezrat Hashem, may it be very, very soon. Happy Purim to everyone, and I'll see you all hopefully next week, right? It'll be right after Purim for me, but I think it'll be okay. Be'ezrat Hashem, I'll see you then. Until then, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.